Ciao y'all and welcome to Making a Musician. It's me, your host, Helen. And I would like to start off by saying the obvious answer to the incredibly clickbaity title and thumbnail is no. Okay, so AI is not replacing piano teachers, but this has been a really cool 30-day challenge experiment, whatever you want to call it, that I've been doing. This is the end of week 1. I really wanted to see if AI was something that I could use in my day-to-day life as a musician to maybe get rid of some of that decision fatigue that I have. As somebody who is a freelancer, I experience a lot of decision fatigues. There's just so many decision fatigues. As somebody who's a freelancer, I experience a lot of decision fatigue. There are so many choices that I have to make on a day-to-day basis and it's really exhausting. So it's really cool that AI can kind of alleviate some of that for me, at least when it comes to my practicing. You know, I feel like I make 20,000 choices every day in my work life, and then when it comes time to sit down and practice, there's just so many more choices that I have to make. Do I want to do scales? Do I want to do Hanon? Do I want to do Czerny? Do I want to sight read? Do I want to work on repertoire? What repertoire do I want to work on? Do I want to work on accompaniment parts for some of my students' lessons or my own music? What do I want to work on? So it's just a lot of things to choose and it gets really overwhelming, and I find that I make the same choices for repertoire over and over again because then I don't have to think about it, but then I don't really grow as a pianist. I thought that this was a really awesome challenge. It also just so happened that my piano teacher is out of town for the next bit, you know, on summer vacation, as one does. It was really cool to be able to have something come up with a practice schedule for me that was really customized to what I was interested in while she's gone. So let's hear from me at the beginning of this challenge, just talking a little bit more about what I'm planning on doing and also running through the practice routines that I got. Hi, Madison. Ciao y'all and welcome to Making a Musician. It's me, your host, Helen, and I am so freaking psyched about this. Okay, so as we all know, I did 30 days of scales, I did 30 days of sight reading, and if you didn't know that, now you do. Okay, so I was thinking, I loved 30 days of sight reading so much, and I was really having a very difficult time picking a new challenge because I was like, I just don't know what's gonna measure up. I don't know what possibly is gonna give me the serotonin rush and pure joy of 30 days of sight reading. But then I was like, okay, well, I feel like I'm wanting to learn how to practice more effectively, so maybe I should do 30 days of planning my practice. And then I was like, hold on a minute. Let's do 30 days of AI planning my practice. So that's exactly what we're doing for the next 30 days. I used ChatGPT and I had it write me a practice schedule for the next 30 days. Now, here's the thing. I had to put in 3 different prompts to eventually get to a session or a practice schedule that I liked, that I thought was kind of in line with what I was going for. So I asked for, please write me a weekly 1-hour practice routine for an intermediate piano student that includes scales, sight reading, Czerny exercises, and repertoire. Now, one of the weird things that it did was write me only a 5-day routine. I did ask for a weekly routine, and when I practice every day, and then if I'm gonna take a day off, it's not like I take one day off a week. I'll maybe take a day off if I'm feeling really drained or something. It's an intentional day that I'm taking off. I don't just not practice on the weekends. So this only being a 5-day routine was a little weird, and it's not quite what I was going for because it is a 30-day challenge and I will be practicing every day of those 30 days. So anyways, the weekly 1-hour practice routine, so I did 10 minutes of scales, and then it was really clear in all the days, and I really appreciated this, that was practice major and minor scales, both hands, parallel and contrary motion, which is super cool. Focused on achieving evenness, clarity, and correct fingerings. Then I had 10 minutes of sight reading. Use a sight reading book or online resource to practice new pieces at an appropriate difficulty level. Try to play through a few short pieces each session. Czerny exercises, it was work on a Czerny study from an intermediate level collection. These exercises help improve finger dexterity and control. Now the thing about the Czerny one that's kind of is it just says work at something at an intermediate level. It doesn't actually assign me an exercise, and there's hundreds, potentially thousands, probably thousands of Czerny exercises, so it would have been nice if it kind of went that extra mile, but also the books are labeled they do have an intermediate or beginner category, so it shouldn't be difficult to find something. And then for repertoire, it has me for 25 minutes working on a piece from my current repertoire, and it specifies that I need to work on challenging sections and bring the whole piece to a higher level of performance. So that's pretty sick. Now for day 2, again, 10 minutes of scales, and it tells me to focus on accuracy and speed. For sight reading, it says continue with sight reading exercises, read new music and styles. For the Czerny, it says practice a different Czerny study to target different technical aspects. Now I agree with this, but also I think that if you're you're focusing on a specific technical aspect, you're probably not gonna like completely master it in just like one session of like 15 minutes of doing charity, which also 15 minutes on charity could potentially be a lot. But I suppose if you're doing one of the longer exercises to get the hands coordinated, actually it might be a decent amount of time if it's like something that's more challenging, which at an intermediate level it will be. But anyways, I probably would go for doing the same one just to like really work on accuracy and strength. It says repertoire for 25 minutes and continue to practice the piece from the previous day, paying attention to dynamics, phrasing, and musical expression. And I really love that we have that emphasis on musicality. For repertoire on day 2, it says if the piece before is nearly performance ready, begin learning a new one, starting with the earlier section. Okay, cool. Day 4, 10 minutes of scales and telling me to maintain a relaxed hand position and fluidity, which is very important. I'm very impressed. Then we have sight reading. It says to aim for more challenging sight reading and incorporate different key signatures and styles. I love that we're specifying that. We have charity exercises. So focus on a study that targets rhythmic precision and coordination between hands. Again, it doesn't tell me which exercise to study, but it does tell me to find something that does those two things specifically, which is really cool. And then it says polish and refining the current piece, focus on interpretation and musicality. Day 5, we review all scales that we have done so far. It does not assign me specific scales, which is a little odd. Then we have 10 minutes of sight reading, and it asks me to specifically challenge myself in this area. Choose a study for charity that requires dynamic control and variation. Love that. And then spend time performing the current piece as if you were in a mini recital, working on building confidence and consistency. I really, really like that about this. And it does specify at the bottom, and this is cute. It says, remember to take a short break, 1 to 2 minutes between each activity to maintain focus and prevent tension. Also feel free to adjust the practice routine according to your progress and individual needs. Happy practicing. Okay, so I enjoyed this routine, but I did want something that was at least 7 days. And I don't know, I was just interested to see if I could get something that was a little bit more specific. So then I gave it a new prompt. Basically, I asked it the same question and I said, would it incorporate daily scales, arpeggios, sight reading, charity exercises, and repertoire? It's the same thing where it says major, minor scales in various keys. It does say start with 2 or 3 keys per day and gradually increase the number of keys as you feel comfortable. I think that makes sense. Then we have 10 minutes of arpeggios, practice major and minor arpeggios, starting with a few keys, adding more over time. For charity, it says focus on an exercise with finger dexterity and strength, play them slowly at first and focus on accuracy and gradually increasing tempo. For sight reading, it says use a sight reading book or online resource, same thing as we did in the beginning. And those are for days 1 through 10. So that's what I really didn't like about this one that it gave me, is I asked for a 30-day daily 1-hour practice routine with all of the things that I had asked for in the previous question, but it didn't give me like repertoire every day. It gave me scales on day 1 through 10, scales, arpeggios, charity, and sight reading. 11 through 20, repertoire, scales, arpeggios, sight reading. And then day 20 to 21, repertoire, scales, arpeggios, sight reading. Or 21 to 30, sorry. So even though this does look like broken down, like with the scale instructions, the repertoire instructions, it does make sense. This is not an ideal routine because, you know, it's weird to like only focus on technique and finger strength for the first 10 days when I'm perfectly capable of playing repertoire. So that's a little strange. And I also don't like that like on days 21 through 30 for the 1-hour practice session, it has me start with a 40-minute session on the repertoire followed by 5 minutes of scales, 5 minutes of arpeggios, and 10 minutes of sight reading, which feels like it's done in a very strange order because you absolutely need to warm up before going for the repertoire. So that was a little strange. So then we did the final version of this. I got very specific. So I said, hello, would you please write me a daily detailed 30-day practice schedule for an intermediate piano student that includes daily emphasis on scales, arpeggios, charity exercises, sight reading, and repertoire. I have looked at the 30-day assignment and it's not terrible. I don't feel like it's exactly what I asked for, but honestly, I'm using like free AI software, so oh well. It's the same thing, it's the same issue as I had with the other one where I don't go over all of the things that I wanted to every single day. However, I am noticing when I look at this, I do everything every other day, which is actually kind of cool. Like it's cycling me through. So every day I do scales and arpeggios, and then on day 1 I do charity and sight reading, and then on day 2 I do scales, arpeggios, and repertoire. repertoire. So I actually think that is kind of cool that I do like charity and sight reading on one day and then I do repertoire the next day. And I also think that that's kind of interesting because then maybe like you sight read the piece and then you work on it more the next day and like get it up to speed. I think that trying that approach might actually be pretty interesting, and that might be a way to get everything I want out of this practice routine. The thing that I found really, really cool about this is on day one, it does tell me which scales to play. It says scales C major and A minor, which are, you know, related. Of course, they have the same key signature. So it says hands separately and together, which is really fantastic. We're starting with separate, we're moving to together. It says 4 octaves of parallel motion. Now, I did say intermediate, and I guess that like 4 octave scales is like, you do start doing that in intermediate, but that's kind of a wild way to start out the gate. But then we also have arpeggios C major and A minor, again, hands separately and together, 4 octave parallel motion, which is really cool. So we have charity exercises, select a moderate level of charity and work on it for 15 minutes. Sight reading, choose a simple piece or exercise from a sight reading book and practice reading through it. On day 2, it's interesting, we do G major and E minor separately and together, 4 octaves parallel motion, and then same thing with arpeggios. And for repertoire, it says spend 30 minutes working on a piece you are currently learning or reviewing. Then scales D major and B minor, same with arpeggios, different set of charity exercises, choosing a new piece to sight read. For F major and D minor for scales and arpeggios, still 4 octaves and parallel motion. We have not seen contrary motion yet. And then for repertoire, we're gonna spend 30 minutes on a piece from my repertoire. 5 B flat major and G minor, 4 octaves parallel motion, scales and arpeggios, another charity exercise, sight reading to pick a new piece, and then E major, C sharp minor for arpeggios and scales. Spend 30 minutes on a different piece in your repertoire. It also doesn't tell me how long to spend on scales and arpeggios, but I asked for a 1-hour practice session and it says 30 minutes on repertoire, so that means 30 minutes on the scales. So that would be 15 minutes for scales, 15 minutes for arpeggios, which does feel a little generous, but oh well. Then we have A flat major and F minor, hands separately and together, 4 octaves parallel motion, same thing for arpeggios, and charity exercises, 15 minutes, and then sight reading. And then it tells me to continue this pattern for the remaining 23 days, alternating between scales, arpeggios, charity exercises, sight reading, and repertoire practice. Gradually increase the difficulty of the exercises and pieces as you progress. Remember to take short breaks during the practice sessions to avoid strain and maintain focus. Happy practicing. I think that the final version is what I'm going to go with. And then the only thing I'm going to tweak is the scales. So I like that we're doing a 4 octave scale, and I will be doing a 4 octave scale. However, my teacher did give me a specific way to practice scales, so I'm gonna be doing what she told me to do in that case. And also I have a wonderful subscriber who told me to try what's called formula pattern scales, or at least I'm pretty sure that's what they were referring to. So I will be doing formula pattern scales where we go up 2 octaves together, we go out 2 octaves, in 2 octaves, up 2 octaves, back down, out, in, and then down 2 octaves. So I'll be doing that on the scales, and I think that this is gonna be super cool. I am very excited. Okay, so as you can see, I was like super psyched about this challenge and I really, really enjoyed it. And here are just some like little reflections on this, as it were. So number 1 was I was really shocked at how well-rounded it was. So I really felt like the practice routine, obviously I asked for specific elements in my monthly practice routine. I was really impressed with how well-rounded this practice routine was, and obviously like I am the one who told the program like what things to incorporate, but I really did enjoy how it distributed them. Granted, in the beginning I was a little bit skeptical because I asked it to incorporate all of the things that I gave it every single day, and it didn't do that. It incorporated them on like an every other day basis, but I actually really ended up enjoying that, and I think that it was really beneficial to spend a big chunk of time one day on repertoire and then the next day spend a chunk of time on sight reading, and then sometimes I would go back and work a little bit on repertoire, and just like changing my focus helped me to keep things feeling fresh. It still allowed me though to get enough repetitions of the same stuff in every week, so I felt like I made a lot of progress, which was amazing. One thing I didn't love was that it didn't give me times for how long to spend on each activity, which one of the versions did. So I basically came up with like 3 versions, right? And one of them was like time specific, but I didn't like that one as much. So the one I ended up using was the final one that was like 7-day routine, and then you like go on a 30-day, you like rotate, yes. I'm bad at math. It doesn't give me specific times for things. So what I've been doing is, if it's just scales and sight reading, then I do 15 minutes on the major for scales and arpeggios and 15 minutes on the minor. In addition, I have also been doing just basically an exercise that my teacher told me to do, where we do 1 octave as quarter note, 2 octaves eighth notes, 3 octaves triplets, and then 4 octaves in 16th notes, which I have really been enjoying as a way to build speed and agility. So, you know, when I'm introducing new key signatures, sometimes I have that moment in my brain where like, it just feels really like, what's going on? Very like radio static, like hot mess girl with the math meme, you know what I'm saying? I personally have really enjoyed this like speed building activity because it like gives me a second to get my footing, and then I will do a 1 octave version of the formula pattern, and then finally the 2 octave version of the formula pattern, and actually I could even do 3 octaves, which I could do 4, but there's not enough keys. The other thing I really enjoyed about this is I think we all get in ruts with our practice where we just keep working on the same music that we're already like pretty decent at, and that's, for me, honestly happens when I'm really overwhelmed and busy in my life and I can't figure out what I should just practice, and it feels like such a big decision and I get really stressed out, so I'm like, oh my god, okay, I'll just like work on the same thing that I've already worked on for the last 3 weeks, and then like you don't learn new music and develop new skills, which is an essential component of being a musician. I have really enjoyed that this makes me be more well-rounded. For example, I have to do different charity exercises, like it'll be like, find an exercise you haven't done before that works on XYZ, and at first I thought like this is gonna be a really dumb idea, but I actually have really enjoyed it and found exercises that I probably wouldn't have looked at otherwise, and so it's really helping me to branch out and work in areas of things that I'm not already good at. So I love the sight reading component of it because I'm always finding new music. For example, the other day I was working on Una voce poco fa, and I really enjoyed singing and playing that. So I think that's something that I'm going to work on doing, and who knows, maybe someday in the very distant future we'll get a video of that. That would be cute. And then just finally, one of the things I noticed this week overall is I feel like I spent less time overall at the keyboard, but I made more progress. So I went to Santa Fe this week to see the operas. I saw Flying Dutchman and Tosca. They were really amazing. I absolutely had the time of my life. And my Airbnb has a little like piano that was very out of tune, but whatever, I practiced on it anyways, but I didn't practice every day. So I think this week out of 7 days, I probably practiced 4, which is not terrible. I noticed that practicing 4 days this week, I've gotten more progress made than I have previously made practicing 7 days a week. And that's fewer hours. I've been practicing like maybe 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours this week, whereas previously I probably was getting like 7 to 9 hours or maybe even more in. Fewer hours spent at the keyboard, but I think that because I have such a good split of what I'm working on, I am making more progress, which is really encouraging to see. So I am super psyched for week 2 of this. I will let you know if I keep doing the exact same like scale stuff and whatnot, and also if my piano teacher is back in town or not. But yeah, I don't think that AI is replacing piano teachers, but it can be a really awesome resource if your piano teacher is out of town having a hot girl summer. Okay, thank you so much. That's it for me. Bye!